The following is a conversation between Matías De Stefano, referred to as me, and his higher self, referred to as I am. The date is March 18th, 2021, and the subject is the emotional aspects of the root chakra in the sign of Pisces. Me. I have a question about empathy. Why the pathos, that is to say, the need for pain? Why? I am. As we said, pathos is the Greek word for suffering, and it comes from the Indo-European concepts of pain. As we have said, the subtle, emotional, conceptual concepts in the beginning of languages and human communication were strictly related to the description of objective things or situations, since the subjective was impossible to express without a comparison. As we described the concept of being, which actually referred to being in a place, a verb of spatial positioning rather than essential description, the concept of pathos also describes an objective reality of the sensation that is produced in the body before his reaction to the environment. Pain has different degrees on its scales from the dense to the subtle. We could put suffering at the negative end and pleasure at a positive end. However, the body interprets both as pain. A caress, a tickle, is torture for the nervous system. However, the brain collapses when feeling this sensation, generating a secretion of hormones, morphine, endorphin, which try to counteract the perceived pain, like a kind of anesthesia to lessen the suffering. And this is what produces the pleasant sensation that you described before a caress or tickle game. Sexual pleasure, orgasm, is part of the scale of pain, since it is related to a violent eruption of the physical body, converted into pleasure due to the will and intention of both people to live that experience. If there is no intention, it is called rape, sexual abuse. It is the mind that, by accepting it, finds ways to make that pain translate into placebo hormones, that produce calm, pleasure. The more conscious the pain, the more pleasure, ecstasy, orgasm. The more unconscious the pain, the more regret, suffering, ailment. Me. So pain is a form of sensory measurement of the body? I am, and I'll explain why. Simply, the body was designed to survive. Do you remember the 5 senses? They are nervous manifestations that help the brain to interpret the world around it. This facilitates the cells to their mobility in the environment, recognizing spaces and possible dangers, as well as food and safety. The senses were developed by the body to receive signals from the outside world, to feed and protect itself from it. Thus, the senses developed to defend themselves against a hostile environment, and for this they needed to receive signals from said environment as pulses of possible threats. Thus, each electrical pulse received from the outside was translated as an intense, sharp signal that was perceived in the brain as an alert. And of course, an alert is not smooth. If you must be vigilant in defending yourself, the announcement of possible death cannot be as soft as a cloud. It must be fast. This is how they understood this signal as a blow, a call for attention, something that breaks, splits, and makes a frightening noise. In the Indo-European language, to cut, to split, it is said del, which gives rise to dolor, that is, pain. In English, in addition from dolens, we have pain, which comes from penal, which refers to the consequence of an act, from the Indo-European que, which means to compensate for something, respond to a call, pay for what is done. The call for attention that the brain receives from external impulses generates an immediate response, sending signals to secrete hormones that compensate for the pain signal, softening the weight, the suffering. This response is electrical, that is, energy that passes between cells, what we call emotion. Thus, all emotion was related to the pain caused by certain external things in different measures. Anguish with the emptiness due to the lack of food, love with the tingling of the blood when we prepare to run, frustration with the pain produced by the unnecessary energy expenditure in a hunt without getting the prey. And so all emotions, to some extent, are related to different degrees of pain. The more conscious one becomes, the pain is controllable. At first, reproduction was painful, since it was done instinctively, like a fire that had to be put out, when the hormones prepared the body for reproduction, something that was biological and not psychological. But when the minds began to discern and choose about their actions, reproduction stopped being a necessity only, and it became a will of its own, beyond the periods of reproduction. A relaxed mind causes the brain to not be alert, but to convert pain impulses, shocks, into simple energy flows, discharges in the cells, turning pain into sensation, and sensation into sensitivity. Me. In other words, pain is the key to the sensitivity of the soul? I am. At least it is in matter. To your question of why the pain, biological logic would be the other way around. Why sensitivity? Me. Sure, because pain has a practical function in biological survival, but sensitivity has no practical use in earthly life. I am. Until he had it. Me. When? I am. At the moment when the cells realized that sensitivity strengthened the bonds in individuals, kept the herd together, ensured the survival of groups, the transcendence of systems and cultures. Sensitivity became key in many animals to maintain the subsistence of the species. The human began to develop it as his greatest strength. Sensitivity became more important than pain, even though it was born from it, which is why we can still understand that a sensitive person suffers more for everything than an insensitive person. The insensitive have no subtle response from the outside world, cannot perceive love or hate, pain or pleasure as others do, cannot emotionally relate to the world. They only manage to do it with themselves. For this reason they are devoid of sensitivity, which makes them hermits, solitary, sullen, negative beings. But a sensitive being, despite its empathy, has a better chance of transcending, of being accepted, loved, protected, and therefore of surviving. Me. But in societies it is frowned upon in many cases that people are very sensitive, especially men. I am. Because they interpret sensitivity with weakness, since sensitivity was an attribute more worked on by women. This is related to the fact that for thousands of years, women had to keep the herd together while men went out hunting. This made men lone hunters who provided through suffering and effort, and women contained and held the family together. And to do so, they had to spend time with everyone, understand them, be empathetic, and therefore sensitive, understanding the pain of the other. This idea made men, culturally, build the idea that being sensitive prevented hunting and exacerbated the pain of loneliness, cold, travel, getting away, killing, fighting for their lives. Pain translated for them into strength, as opposed to sensitivity. However, what made it possible to sustain human unity with true strength was feminine sensitivity. These last 100 years of history, after millions of years of survival, with the exception of some periods during the Mesopotamian, Atlantean, Egyptian, Greek, and Roman times, as well as in matriarchal societies, were the first moments in which man, on a global level, stopped hunting and working, while women were able to take their place. This is how masculine sensibility was finally able to emerge after millennia of repression, with the sole objective of surviving. It is no longer necessary. Society has evolved to the point where there are no longer roles by gender, and sensitivity has become somewhat androgynous. From the Greek andros, meaning man, and gine, meaning woman. Pain finally begins to turn into pleasure because taboos are dispelled, released. So, the sensory capacity of people ceases to be a tool for social unity and clan survival, and they become a transcendental characteristic of the soul, of the interconnection of beings in the world beyond the clan, but of all humanity in relation to the animal, vegetal, and mineral worlds, understanding them as brothers, feeling them as part of oneself. The sensitivity takes on a global, universal, and cosmic role which transcends the limits of pain. Me. This is how we interpret the awakening of consciousness as the pain of the soul, or a pain that leads to a spiritual crisis. The pain became subtle, but we continue to associate it with earthly pains. I am. Pain has a utility for interpreting the environment. People who suffer, who live in pain and constant depression, are open to receive the stimuli of the world without awareness, living it from the pulses of unconsciousness. Me. But what about those who suffer even knowing from their consciousness? I am. Nobody suffers from consciousness. Suffering and believing that you are aware of suffering only makes you unconscious of your own psyche. If you suffer, if it hurts, it is because there are aspects that have not yet been worked on. It is because there is still a lot to clean up and understand. Don't judge yourself when you feel pain. Just keep digging to bring light, sensitivity. Nobody consciously suffers, because in consciousness there is no suffering, only options, pleasure, joy. Don't judge your pain, just know it, and become aware of it, step by step. And to achieve this, you must open yourself to feel, to be sensitive, to put aside what you believe, what you know, and understand what you feel and perceive. Me. Sensitivity opens my inner world to the outside. It interprets reality, and through the pain barometer it shows me what state of consciousness I am in. I am. That's right. Therefore, tell me what hurts you, and I will tell you who you are. Me. My eyes hurt today, my back hurts, and I know very well that an internal void that I can't fill still hurts. I am. Your sensitivity is open to recognizing that your pain is the falling in love, which you cover up with people, ideas, images that you consider love when it is not. Your eyes are tired of seeing what you can no longer support in the axis of your spine. That emptiness that weighs more than a hole, and that no one is capable of filling, for that void is too filled with your expectations of what should be, and you leave no room for what is. Me. Thank you. I am. For what? Me. For making me see this. I am. It's always nice to share what we feel, release the weight, expand the soul, sensitize the body, and strengthen the spirit. Me. I manifest my intention to awaken sensitivity in me. I am. And it is in this way that sensitivity will complete the empty space, manifesting a coherent and consistent reality.